Great. Hello, everyone. This is our fearless leader, the group Anger Management, Nathan. And I just wanted to take an opportunity to interview him and get some of your questions answered, because I know the struggle of having anger in my life, either someone being angry at me and me causing anger for somebody feeling like that, or being angry myself. And so what we first want to know is just like, what's your experience, Nathan? What have you done in life to create a great experience around this?
I've kind of done all sorts of things, really. So I started training as a psychotherapist 2007, 2008, so okay. 13, 14 years ago. Before that, I worked in sports marketing, so that was kind of cool, being a guy in pro sport. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. But I really had that sense of not doing something kind of useful in the world.
Yes.
So I suppose you might call it a midlife crisis. But it was quite
exactly. Where you want to make a difference.
Yeah, exactly. So retrained. And the particular type of psychotherapy I do, you have to do group work and couples work as well as individual work. Perfect. And in England, there's not much of a culture for doing groups. I know in the States, I think it's quite a big thing, but here it's nobody wants to do groups. So I was kind of thinking, what can I do to get a group going? And I realized I was getting lots of people asking about doing anger work, but not actually coming through individually. So I thought, hey, let's do a group and get that going. I realized really quickly it was kind of the missed out problem. Nobody really talked about it. It's not a psychiatric disorder, so you don't get a diagnosis, which means a lot of therapists don't necessarily think about it or work with it. But I realized how much anger actually sat with everything else that came to me. So either people got too angry, so the people in our group, but actually people who couldn't get angry equally had problems. So they couldn't set boundaries, they couldn't use their agency to get their needs met. So either way, I just realized that this emotion we don't talk about sits in the middle of everything we experience.
Yes. Oh, that is so true.
Yep.
So I'm curious just to know, like, what's one story that, that really is like, this is why I do this. Like, what's a story that somebody wow. that, somebody that you actually worked with and you're like, this is why I do this, to make this big difference?
That's a great question.
I should have prepared you for it. It just popped in my head.
But there kind of is somebody, because I use their story a little bit changed as I use it quite a lot because I think it underlies a lot of the same similar things that happen to a lot of the clients that come to me.
Right.
So I've got a book in my head. It's not on paper at all yet, but it's absolutely in my head. And it's about this idea that I really got working with this client, which I'm thinking of as a kind of good guy, angry guy paradox.
Right.
So all these guys, mainly guys, I mean, I work with both, but it's mainly guys come to me, and they're coming because either they say they're angry, or just as often somebody else, maybe their wife, says, hey, you're angry, you've got a problem.
Right.
And one of the questions I always ask in our first session is, who are you? Which gets, really interesting answers.
It does.
And what I noticed with these guys is they were all saying almost word for word the same thing. They were saying, I'm a good guy. I'm the kind of guy who will do anything for you. I'm the neighbor you want. I'll come and mow your lawn, all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And yet they're sitting in my room because somebody else thinks that they're really angry.
Or they've done something that proves that they're not controlling their anger. That's so fascinating, because I remember reading a book, and it was a positive mental book, and I can't remember the author. It might have been like Napoleon Hill, but he said everybody thinks they're a good guy. Like he realized he was interviewing this criminal who had killed ladies and done all this horrible things. And he asked him, and he's like, I'm a good guy.
Yeah.
So we all believe that about ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I honestly, I think for most of these guys, they probably are. I might have a debate with the murderer, but
over their actions, right?
Yeah. So most of these guys are. So this particular guy, He worked in a very responsible job. He'd been promoted to manager. He was always the first one in and the last one to leave. He'd always put himself in front for the team.
Wow.
He did most of the chores at home. And yet he's coming in, well, actually he came in because him and his wife were just on the point of divorcing. They actually stayed together eventually, but at the time they did split up temporarily. And, he was, because I just get angry. And what would happen is he would have a, oh, sorry, I've just got a fly or something here. You'd have this thing where he's putting himself out to please other people. So there's this kind of pleasing thing going on. And in doing so, he doesn't set any boundaries that keep himself okay. So at some point, he's going to forget to do something or do something wrong. So either his wife or his boss says, you didn't put the bins out, you didn't do X, Y, or Z, something that feels really, really small.
Right.
And the 9 things he's done to make her happy get missed for the one thing that he's forgotten.
Exactly.
And at that point, the whole good guy persona disappears. And then he feels shame, he feels bad, and defends that by getting angry.
Oh, yeah.
But as I delved into his kind of background, there was so much stuff about his relationship with his dad. So his dad I'm sure he was a great guy, ran his own business, but there was no emotional attachment between the two.
He's a good guy. I'm sure he is.
I'm sure he is, yeah. So all he really wanted was for his dad to spend time with him.
Oh, yeah.
And it never happened. So he told me this story that he loved to go fishing. But he always went fishing because somebody else's dad took him. So he saved up his pocket money to buy his dad a fishing rod. So they could go fishing together. And it kind of happened once, but no more than that. It felt heartbreaking how much this guy was going out of his way to try and please the other. And I think the point of that is that his story becomes about how the drive of people is to fit in, to please other people, to do the right thing by others at a cost to ourselves.
Yes. And then the one thing that he didn't do right becomes linked to the one time his dad went out and it wasn't enough.
Yeah, absolutely. So you get this kind of internal message. You'll hear them say things like, whatever I do, it's never enough. I can never get it right for other people. Yes. So underneath this good guy stuff is such a resentment.
And how many of us all relate with that? Like song, Never Enough, from that movie that came out about I'm just like, man, that's like, I feel that it's never enough, never enough. Yeah. And how we're always looking for the problem to find a solution. And the solution is stop looking for the problem.
Yes.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Awesome. Well, the first question I had was like, what is anger? And that really describes it. Like, I hope that everybody's relating to this and you're thinking, wow, maybe it has to do with my mom or dad or a significant relationship from when I was young.
Yeah. So there's one of the questions I ask in the group every now and again. I've been so busy recently, I haven't spent as much time as I like there. But one of the questions is, how was anger expressed when you were a child?
Yes.
And for 90% of the group, actually, it sounds like it was pretty hideous, pretty toxic, often aggressive and violent. But for the other 10%, anger was never expressed. So what's missing is actually somebody appropriately and assertively expressing this emotion.
So it doesn't matter if there's none. Well, it's a much reduced amount if there's none, but there's still a result that there wasn't an example.
You don't grow up knowing what to do with it.
Wow. Very interesting. Because you would think if they didn't experience anger that they would naturally, and many people don't have anger issues then, but 10% of people still do because of something else.
Yeah.
That is fascinating. Really.
Yeah, it really is. It shows how much I think that we only learn by what's modeled to us as children.
Oh, yeah.
And that for anger, there are quite the opposite. There are so few examples of role models who do anger well. I mean, if you ask people to think about it, they probably struggle to name anyone.
Yes. I agree.
Yeah, real problem.
Yeah, really. So the next question kind of leads into this. How do you know if you need professional help? Because if everyone's dealing with anger poorly and
Yeah.
none of us have a good example, how do you
Yeah.
know when you need professional help? And what kind of are the signs?
Yeah. So it's a great question. And there's kind of not an easy answer to it.
Right.
But I suppose my question back is, how much of a problem is it causing you in your life? And who's telling you about that problem?
Yeah.
So most, it's probably true to say that more than half the people who come to anger management, they haven't chosen to. Somebody's told them. Probably the
They
wife.
don't even know they have a problem.
Well, they don't always agree they have a problem.
You have the problem.
Yeah, exactly that. I'm only angry because everybody else is an idiot.
Exactly.
And whilst you think like that, and there may be some truth in that, but whilst you think like that, you're never going to change your bit of it.
Exactly. That's a blame cycle, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a blame cycle. When you're blaming someone else for your emotions, how disempowering that is.
But I had, I remember it was one of the first anger groups I ever did. And I'm sitting in the room waiting for everyone to turn up. And it was probably this time of year, so it was cold and wet and dark. So I get a phone call from one of the people that's supposed to be coming. And I genuinely cannot repeat what he was saying because there were more expletives in it than I'd imagine. But it was, the gist of it was he's running late and it's his wife's fault. She's deliberately sabotaged him coming.
Oh.
Hear the words there. But there were lots of F's and C's and other things in there. So I said, he's clearly driving at the same time. So I'm like, don't worry, you're driving, just get here safe, So we turn up and he's continuing this rant. I don't need to be here. I'm not the one with the problem. It's everybody else has got a problem, etc., etc. You've probably heard exactly the same thing.
Right.
You'll see the post in the group. And I'm letting him talk. And then eventually he says something about he's got 2 young daughters, about 5 and 6. And actually one of them is beginning to get scared of him when he's angry. And there's the kicker, that's who you're doing it for. Exactly. If your daughter is angry with you, or your wife's telling you there's a real problem that we need to resolve, then you probably need help. So what do you risk losing if you don't change now?
Ooh, yeah. So are the risks outweighing the advantage? I mean, it's really like write down what the bad things that could happen and the good things that can happen and see, because that's a good idea. Because if it is, and what are your children learning? Like, it always comes back to me to like, what kind of legacy do we want to leave in them that they're going to give to their children and their children? Yeah,
it's really noticeable, Tammy, how many, again, men particularly, the motivation to come to therapy, whether anger or otherwise, is about their kids. And they need to be better dads.
They are good guys.
They are good guys. Aren't we all?
Exactly. Totally. Because we all have our own set of proofs and experiences to say it's okay for me to act this way because I have this situation, but that situation isn't happening now. So the reaction is inappropriate.
Yes. And, I like to, if I'm working with someone who is like that and very blaming, I like to really step into their frame of reference, their viewpoint. Because challenging it just doesn't work.
Right.
So I'll say something like, okay, that's fine. Let's assume the world is full of a-holes.
Right.
You're the one who's sitting in here. You're the one who's paying me. You're the one who risks losing your kids, losing your wife, etc., etc. So how do you work better? How do you deal better with all these idiots? And that hooks them into something we can then work with.
Perfect. So then, there's an empowerment when we can change ourselves. But of course, that's not their mindset at the beginning.
Exactly.
Super powerful. Okay. So the next question, I'm actually going to read one from our group because it's about the same. Is it about them or is it about me? And what she says is it okay. How do you express anger in healthy ways when the same problems aren't getting resolved? So that's that pattern. And is it self-inner work or team effort?
Great question, isn't it?
It is.
And yeah, I had a quick look at the questions beforehand, and I thought, yeah, I can't actually say yes or no to any of these. They all have nuance. So I'm going to use two very big psychotherapy words, and then I'm going to explain them.
Okay.
Because no one understands them otherwise.
Right.
So in kind of therapy, we think about intrapsychic and interpersonal.
Okay.
So intrapsychic is about what's going on inside. And the interpersonal is about how that manifests in our relationship with other people. So of course, what people bring to therapy is what's happening between them. We're having arguments, we're falling out, etc., etc.
Right.
What we also need to look at is what's happening inside us that's driving that behavior.
Exactly.
So normally when anybody is angry, okay, let me just caveat that slightly, because there are some very appropriate times to get angry. But normally when we have the kind of problem anger that people are bringing to the group, it's because we are feeling something inside that we're uncomfortable with. So sadness, rejection, abandonment.
Yeah, there's a deeper, when you talked about that driving force, there's something behind it that's
exactly
protecting or defending.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if it's a relationship problem, for example, and again, that's most of what I work with, because I do couples work as well, then invariably it's a fear of being rejected by the other.
Wow.
And to get away from feeling uncomfortable, we push it away by getting angry and by blaming the other person.
Yeah.
So, hey, I forgot to put the bins out today. Actually, I didn't. They did get but and then my wife gets angry. Well, actually, there's lots of me feeling guilty.
Right.
Maybe embarrassed.
Yep.
Maybe thinking, hey, she's really telling me I'm not good enough here right now.
Yeah.
So my defense is to go, well, you're not perfect.
Exactly.
Get out of here.
Right.
Which, of course, doesn't help solve the problem.
Right.
And actually, if my real fear is of being rejected, what I've just done is to push her away. So actually, I've produced the opposite result from the one I want.
Exactly. And so then this pattern begins, right? The next time the bins are supposed to go out, there's already this event that's in the background causing guilt and frustration. And exactly. So that does explain it in a way. So the inner work helps us not respond the same way and not create that same pattern, which is what she's asking. Like, how do you express it when the problems aren't getting resolved?
Yeah.
And there has to be inner work to the past experiences.
Yes, absolutely. So, in a sense, what we're asking someone to do is change their behavior, but normally people are already behaving in the way they think is right.
Right.
So without the inner work, you can't then get the behavioral change.
Ooh.
Otherwise, it would be easy, right?
Yes. So without the inner work, you can't get the behavior change. I hope that you guys hear that. And it's so powerful, because otherwise it's kind of like we raise the bar and then we expect them to do this and then this and then this. And then pretty soon everything is making us angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it really does come to, without that inner work, we can't change our behavior.
Absolutely.
That's awesome answer. Okay. Another question. When you feel anger building inside of you, how can you calm yourself down without lashing out? So she's feeling it building already.
Yeah. So that's such a common question.
It is.
And, most people I talk to with anger issues talk about going from kind of 0 to 100 in a split second. So they normally miss the bit about it building. If you can spot it building, actually, yeah. I can't do the finger click, otherwise I'd do it. I don't know why I haven't got that particular skill. So at the point when we are in the middle of an anger rage, I think there's very, very little we can do apart from get out of the situation. Because what happens biologically is we lose connection with the thinking part of our brain.
Exactly.
And we are acting from technically the limbic system, but it's that place of fight or flight. So we don't think. So people talk about going blank and maybe feeling a bit of head fog. And that's actually what happens because the thinking part of our brain gets disconnected. It's like a short circuit that allows us to act more quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So the key to anger management isn't what do I do then? It's not the count to 10, take a deep breath, all of which are great.
Yeah.
It's how do I stop getting there?
Right. Or noticing the trigger, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's two things. One is noticing the trigger
Mm-hmm.
so that we can start to deal with it differently. And the second one is people say, hey, I got really angry and I don't know why. And one of the reasons why they don't know why is it because it wasn't about that one moment.
Right.
What tends to happen is you get a build-up of resentments.
Yes.
And, you have a really bad day at work, but because at work you feel you can't deal with it, you build up, you build up, you build up. And when you get home, you shout at the wife for some really minor thing. So it's not about the moment, it's about what built up to there. So again, things like keeping a diary help you spot all the small triggers that become eventually the big triggers. So it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Mm-hmm.
That one little thing on top of all the rest.
Yeah. And anyone that's had anger, I mean, any kind of anger ever, knows that it's the straw that broke the camel's back, right? It's sometimes directed towards an innocent person.
Yeah. So one of the ways exactly that. So one of the ways people like to talk about this idea is it's like a bucket filling up with water that will eventually overflow.
Right.
But here's the second bit of that. So yes, you can keep emptying the bucket. But if you've had a difficult upbringing where you haven't learned to be resilient and deal with this, it's like your bucket's already half full of sludge. So it doesn't take much water before it's overflowing.
Right.
So again, the inner work is about clearing all the sludge out so that you have more space so you don't get angry quite so easily.
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to add that I learned about memory work 3 or 4 years, 2017, I guess. I mean, I learned first in 2011 and then in 2017, and I wanted change, but I kept doing the same pattern. And when I learned that memories can be updated, like we update them all the time, and how to do that, then all of a sudden I was having effortless change, because if the memory's not there, then it doesn't hold that direct pattern to, you're not feeling, the sludge is gone. So it takes.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's super powerful. So how do you suggest people, you said the thing is to get out. Do you explain, like, should they tell the person I'm going for a walk? Like, what do you suggest?
Yeah. So in a sense, it depends on your closest to the person. So if this is at home with your wife or your partner, then I'd really suggest that you've already discussed what's going to happen before you get there. So next time I get angry, I'm going to take a time out. I'm going to go away. I'm going to go away for 20 minutes. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to make a cup of tea and we can start again.
Okay. So I hear first you're going to prepare that this is how it's going to be. You're going to tell them how long it's going to be. And then you're going to tell them when you come back together how you're going to resolve it.
So it's really important you have that. I call it a timeout contract.
Yep.
Here's what happens otherwise. I notice myself get angry. I walk out of the room.
And then they come.
Exactly. Don't walk away from me when I'm talking to you.
Right. So both people, so there's the part of the teamwork that the person that asked that question, there's the part of the teamwork where this contract keeps both of you working towards the betterment of your relationship.
Yeah.
So they know, like, oh my goodness. I remember the first time my husband told me, when I get home, I need 5 minutes. Can you just give me 5 minutes? I was like, oh, sure. Like, I didn't know. Like, why are you so grumpy when you walk in? I'm trying to give you a hug and you're like pushing me away. And he's like, just give me 5 minutes. And I was like, oh, okay. Give him 5 minutes. And he's like, hi, hon. A total different person. So that communication part is huge so that both of you know, what does this person need? And can I give that
exactly
for our relationship?
And how painful was it when you thought he was pushing you away?
Oh, it was terrible. I'm like, why are we together? Like, get this, like, how come don't even come home? There's a lot of
and such a simple fix.
Exactly.
When you talk to each other.
Yep. Right. And that communication, and maybe the person doesn't, they don't know that they need to get out. So that is really important that that, this is an expert. He's a psychotherapist. He's saying, have a plan for getting out and then explain that to the person, even if it's a boss, even if it's someone else, be like, gosh, I just realized about myself that I need 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's only at these times, but if it happens, here's how I'd like to work with it, and then work with it that way, because the person that's on the receiving side will appreciate it. Like, I was so grateful when he finally said, give me 5 minutes. I'm like, oh, that's so easy, and so hurt when I didn't know that.
Yes, exactly. And I just wanted to pick up, you said 20 minutes.
Whatever.
That is actually about the time you need, because
right.
That's about the time it takes for the adrenaline that builds up for the anger to start moving through your body.
For anybody.
Yeah, for anybody.
Anyone and everyone, 20 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, good. And what are some good things to do in that 20 minutes? Because I like to tell people you should be practicing what you want in your life instead of thinking like, this has made me mad and this has made me mad. What should they be thinking about in that 20 minutes?
So the first thing I think somebody needs to do is reconnect to that thinking part of the brain.
Yep.
And the best way to do that is through some kind of breathing technique.
Perfect.
Now, I'm glad we've got this opportunity, because so often I see posts in the group going, I tried breathing, it doesn't work.
Yes.
Hey, breathing is really important, right? But we know enough about the science of the way the body works that there are certain breathing techniques that will absolutely kickstart the body's parasympathetic nervous system, which is the one that's about rest and relaxation.
Yes.
So what you don't do is just go 10 breaths.
Yeah.
Not going to do anything, right? So you really need to think about slow breaths that go right down into the abdomen.
Yep.
So if this kind of bottom bit isn't going out when you breathe, you're not breathing deep enough.
Right. So you want to feel that filling up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
It's a real slow, controlled thing.
And both of us like open up instead of having
you see that, yeah, all that body changes at the same time.
Yeah.
So if you or any of the people in the group have ever done yoga, that basic kind of yogic breathing technique is perfect. So there's another one that actually is really good and really effective, sometimes called square breathing.
Mm-hmm.
So what you do is, have you come across it before? Yeah. So you kind of imagine there's a square in front of you, and you kind of follow the square around as you're doing the breathing. So you breathe in for a count of 4, nice and deep. You then hold it for a count of 4, and then breathe out very slowly for a count of 4. One of the things to think about when you're breathing out is, imagine you're breathing out through a straw. So there's a very controlled, very contained way of breathing. And then you hold yourself empty for 4 seconds. So it will look like this. And actually just repeating that maybe 3 times will have a huge effect. It's not a magic bullet. So if on a scale of 10, you're feeling at an 8 or a 9, that's going to take you down to a 6 or a 7.
Right.
But that's enough for you then to get this thinking part of your brain in place. So you can go, okay, what's really happening here? I feel like that they are, treating me like an idiot. They're disrespecting me. Is that true? Or were they just asking a question?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's such a strong link between the way we think and the way we feel.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And there's lots of research that suggests that people with anger problems are more likely to see somebody else's mistake as a deliberate slight. So you're in a bar and it's really busy and it's really jostly and somebody bumps into you and you spill your drink. It happens.
Right.
The kind of person who goes, hey, you did that deliberately, is going to get angry, right?
Yeah.
The kind of guy who goes, okay, that's fine. It's a mistake. It happens. We've all done it.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. So being able to challenge that thinking process that someone's deliberately slighted me, someone's deliberately disrespecting me.
Right.
Is really important there. And you start to think about, okay, how can I play this differently now?
Yes. And you said something, disrespect. And I would be curious to know how many people get angry because you're disrespected and how that played out in your childhood. The moment your parents got disrespected, they were angry and you're just repeating that, right?
Yeah.
Very.
And you probably got shouted at by your parents for disrespecting them.
Exactly.
So again, you're in that place where it's really important.
Right. There is big trouble coming.
There's big trouble coming. And of course, Tammy, it's perceived disrespect.
Exactly.
It might not actually be.
Right.
But again, if you know the person well enough, check it out. I heard that as you insulting me. Is that what you meant?
Right. And
normally the guy's going to go, no, I just was asking about whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. Or they're thinking they're in their own day's events and they're just saying something without even paying attention.
What I really learned doing this, they're not thinking about you.
Right.
They're just in their own head.
We're not that important.
I know. Who knew, right?
We're only that important to ourselves.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. It's very, they have this narcissistic conversation going around, and all of us, especially when we're hurt and injured, like that's what we're going to do. We're just going to focus inward to protect and defend ourselves and not notice other people. So very interesting. Okay. One last question, I think. How do I get my rage out without harming anything or anyone? Punching a pillow does not work.
Yeah. That's a great question. And it links with this question we see in the group quite a lot about rage rooms. I don't know if you have them.
Rooms. I just saw that on TV one day.
Yeah. And you know what? My sense is they don't really work.
Right.
And the main reason they don't work is, like we said earlier, it's normally not about the anger.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's this idea of a secondary or substituting emotion.
Right.
Now, there's lots of problems with a substitute emotion, but one of them is it seems to have this endless fuel.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're in a rage, you can be in a rage for days.
Yeah, especially if you're raging.
yeah, absolutely. And when you're in that place, you're not just thinking of that one event, you're thinking of every time you've ever been let down, disrespect, all of that stuff. And you don't notice. That's why you can stay there for 3 days, is you don't notice. You're just in this living hell, actually.
Yeah.
A bit.
Right.
So the rage room, it might be a lot of fun. It might give you some temporary relief, but it's not addressing the sadness, the vulnerability, the shame that's underneath.
Exactly.
So actually, it's going to sound difficult, and I know this might not be the answer that the person wants. The best way to process rage is to talk about it.
Okay. We don't want to know what, we don't want to be patted on the back and say, we want to know what works.
Yeah.
So finding out those, and I think, talk about what is it from your childhood that's still bringing this up, and dealing with a professional or a person that knows how to help you change that program, that problem where it started.
Yeah, and I think if you have that kind of rage regularly, that's a good example of when getting professional help is good. Because we often think of like anger as a scale where you've got calm, a bit peed off, angry, and rageful. Right. But actually, there's a lot of evidence that suggests that rage is a slightly different emotion, and that actually it's it's like a knotted ball of string that has a whole load of different emotions in it. So yes, you're angry, but you're also feeling abandoned, rejected, shame, all of those kind of things. And I think without the help of a professional, it's very hard to unpick the ball of string.
For yourself, yes.
Yeah.
Right. Because you're in the ball.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Like there's no way out. So, and I know people have felt that way with anger or rage, but that's very interesting that rage is actually set a part of it and has all those extra.
Yeah.
I wrote this in the group because I found this most fascinating. I've studied psychology my whole life, and I saw this show, and it was like these shows where they go out and they do these interesting little things to see if it's true or not, or it's something about like find out if it's false or find out if it's true. It's like finding.
Okay.
So they took these people, they made them really angry. Like they brought in this person that was racist, and they said mean things about their race and were very racist out loud. And then half of the group, they put in rooms where they could break things and crash things and throw things, a rage room, I suppose. And the other half, they were like, oh, you play piano. So they put them in a room with a piano. Or if you do art, they put them in a room with art. And then afterwards they brought them together and they talked to them. And the people that did the rage room thing were so angry, they wanted to kill that person.
Yeah.
They were like, I hate them. They're terrible. They should die. I hope they go to hell, and all these terrible things. But then the people that were in the art room were like, you know what? They probably had a bad day. I'm not going to worry about it. It's not going to affect me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I couldn't figure it out then because I didn't know anything about how the brain works and how the pattern gets bigger when we allow it to continue. I didn't know that. So I was like, I thought we were supposed to get it out. I thought like once I got my anger out, it would be gone, or my sadness out, because I dealt more with sadness is, really what my deal was. And so I could not figure it out until I started learning how the brain works. And so I hope that gives somebody else freedom to start researching, like, what is it that I need to do for myself? Like you said, go out, go for a walk, know what you should be thinking about, maybe do something for art, or you definitely do those breathing techniques, but like get yourself somewhere where you're doing maybe the creative side of your brain, right?
Yeah. So I love that creativeness really allows you to process feeling. But actually, if you're not, we're not all artists and musicians, unfortunately. Just journaling, simply writing your feelings down in a book. And there was a research study. It was in America. I'm thinking it was kind of somewhere up your way, but I can't remember now. And they were doing this research on journaling, but it wasn't about feelings. It was about physical stuff. So they took people with a cut on their arm. And the people who journaled every day, the cut healed faster than those didn't.
Well, I wonder if because journaling is writing and it's artistic.
Well, I think it's the link, it's that kind of mind-body link. So we like to think of them as different, but I'm guessing from the way you talk, you realize it's one system.
Yeah.
So, a healthy mind and a healthy body, the two go together.
Exactly.
And journaling addresses a healthy mind.
Yep. I remember, so when I was doing my brain training information, I remember when they told us to have a happy journal. And I was like, what? And the happy journal consisted of happy memories, which I had a hard time finding at first, but then after I practiced, I got better. Gratitude. So like 10 things you're grateful for. And gratitude's so great, right? Because that just opens us up towards noticing more things to be grateful for.
Exactly.
It had to do with goals. So sometimes we don't write down our goals, we write down what we don't want. And so in our journals, be careful to write down what you want. And then the gems are kind of like the scrapbook of good things. So if you go for a walk and you're having a great time with your kids and you pick up a little flower, dry it and paste it in there, or you have a picture, or you have a note from your kids. So that's kind of the little scrapbook section. And then affirmations is the last part. So there's like 5 sections, and this happy journal really started changing, changed what I was focusing on. I was looking for good things. I was looking for happy things.
Yeah. And it changes what your subconscious focuses on, because it realizes this is where you want to look.
Exactly.
I always I've got this idea when I think of the way the brain works, a bit like the Amazon algorithm. We all shop on Amazon, right?
Yeah.
So you have that experience. You shop on Amazon.
They always know exactly what we want, even if we haven't said it.
Exactly. So you do your shopping, it thinks it knows what you want, and therefore you get an email, hey, Tammy, you like this, so buy this, etc., etc.
It shows up on Facebook, it shows up on Google.
But of course, every now and again, I'll buy a present for somebody else, which is not something I want. So, what started me on this is I bought I can't remember what I bought. It was something to do with Harry Potter for my grandson.
Okay.
Big thing at the time.
Yeah.
So for the next month, I'm getting, hey, buy some Gryffindor pajamas, buy a Harry Potter sweatshirt. I don't want that stuff. But of course, because I didn't want that, I didn't click on any of those links. So very quickly they started to disappear, and it gave me back what it thought I liked before, which is psychotherapy books and CDs.
Yes.
So your brain's very similar to that. If you don't give it a task, it gives you what it thinks you want. And what it thinks you want will be based on all this stuff we do when we're not conscious. So most of it's negative.
Yes, right, because that's what the subconscious focus is on, just to keep you safe. It's just surviving you.
Yeah.
Right.
So when you do a journal like you're talking about, what you're doing, even if it's only 10 minutes every morning, is you're telling your brain, hey, I need to look for gratitude things. I need to look for my hidden gems. I need to look for all the nice things that happened. And like you say, when you start doing,
and you're like, life is changing.
Yeah.
Life has
Just from that. Yeah.
Right.
But you're seeing it differently.
Right. I love it. That's a great note to end on. Well, I didn't even, I'm Tammy Magnuson. I didn't even mention. So, and I love this kind of work. I love psychology. I love the study of the brain. I do brain training for my own business and executive mindset life coaching. And it started with my own story, really. And I think that's where we all are. It starts with our story. We want to make a difference. And I just hope that this gives you guys so much value and some ideas on what to do. And I hope that you really take this and do some communicating with the people that you need to let know what you need. You need 20 minutes. And it's so beneficial for them and for you, and together working towards the goal of whatever it is, your job, your relationship, your children. And, you know, even with your children, tell them, right? Like we should tell them, you know what? I know that I'm dealing with this and I want to make it better. And so here's what I need. And I can't wait to come back and do this with you. Or like, just be clear and set them up ahead of time, like, so that they know when you leave, it's not about them, right? We don't want our kids to think, oh, I'm the reason dad got mad. I'm the reason mom hates me. It's really about us and how we need time. And then we teach them how to take time for themselves when they need it.
What great modeling for your kids.
Oh, and doesn't that change the legacy we give? I love that. Yes. Awesome. Well, this has been so wonderful. I'm so happy I reached out and asked to interview you. I know that so many people are going to appreciate it as well. All right. That's a wrap. We love you all. And hope it helps. Great. I'll just stop the recording.